Welcome back. You know, scandals are a part and parcel of Japanese politics, and as we predicted in Christmas, the period between January and April would be fraught with lots of difficulties by the LDP and a lot of news stories that were coming out. And what we've found out is Shukan Bunshun has really taken this objective to heart. They've developed a lot of scandals. And what I'd like to do now is talk about the scandals that are on the table right now and those things that are really irritating the Prime Minister. Michael, what's your favorite scandal hot on the topic now?
Mine is really small, but it nevertheless has a great deal to do with international image. There was a member of the government who stood in for Minister Amari after Mr. Amari resigned, who at the TPP ceremony. The signing ceremony.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. And he was such a non-entity, except for, by the way, he was dressed. He was dressed in full formal kimono.
Excellent.
And he was basically the only person in native garb, unless you consider suits a native garb somewhere. And I suppose he wanted to show pride, national identity, whatever. In my own hometown newspaper, the Tokyo Shimbun, one reader wrote in a poem, yes, there he is, the man in the kimono. Who is he? Who are you? Definitely, who are you?
Maybe an attempt to stand out.
It was an attempt to stand out, and it turns out that was not the only thing he was doing to stand out. He got grilled in the Diet for his behavior before the ceremony. And it turns out, if you look at his Twitter feed, that he was tweeting as he was being driven in a motorcade with a large security detail because they were very paranoid. They've been anything having to do with trade nowadays, they're very, very scared about riots, attacks on the
TPP and that sort of
all
thing.
These things. And so he was very much in a lockdown kind of situation, and he starts tweeting everything about the security that's going on. And he takes photos and puts it on Twitter.
Gosh, Mom.
Look, there's the guy with a big gun. Click.
How about that?
Wow, what a rube. What an incredible, just an inconceivable level of, I guess, arrogance, or self-absorption. He deservedly got absolutely fried in Diet Committee for this kind of behavior. I loved that.
Yes.
Who is he, and is his Twitter account new? Because he clearly hasn't learned that you don't just, everything that pops in your head, you don't put on Twitter.
Well, I mean, look at him. I mean, he's shoved in the limelight. I mean, his number one suddenly is gone, and there's nobody to fill in that gap. I mean, Mr. Ishihara is not quite ready for the role, and he had been in the negotiation, so I guess he thought he would put on a new suit and do what he normally does.
Oh, so he's been active on Twitter before?
I have no idea.
I don't know.
What's your favorite?
My favorite is the Northern Territories minister, who mispronounced the name of the island. She's supposed to be one of the people who are promoting the return of the Northern Territories back to Japan from Soviet occupation.
It's her job.
It is her job. And in a press conference, she was not able to read the Chinese characters that represented the name of the four islands, one of the four islands. And I thought that was pretty hilarious.
Oh, it was hilarious. She was the butt of many jokes.
Right.
But the thing is, I actually believe that Shimajiri, who hails from Okinawa and who lost her seat in the debacle in Okinawa in 2014, but reemerged as a zombie, as we call them, because they come back from the dead in the proportional list.
Right.
She I think, is partly functionally illiterate. She did not go to high school here in Japan. She went to high school in the U.S., and I don't think she has much in the way of education. She's been in the entertainment field. So it shows that decisions made by the LDP in terms of its recruitment but come back to bite them. They just recently recruited for the House of Councilors election for the proportional list Imai Eriko, one of the four members of the song group Speed, which was really big in the 1990s, which were a bunch of a foursome of very young Okinawan young women. She's now 32, which is just above the age limit when you can be a member of the House of Councilors, and she's been recruited. I suppose is a part of the idea of getting the young people to come out and vote.
Right.
But I'm not sure. I've looked at her Twitter feed, and it's not really intellectually challenging.
Big surprise.
Surprise there. And the thing is, on her Twitter feed, she never mentions the fact that she's been made a House of Councilors candidate.
Well, that's not very kawaii.
I think so.
Maybe not.
What caught your eye this week?
Well, it would have to be the editorial in The Economist called Anchors Away, and it is about media freedom in Japan. We're really on the cusp of two new reports, Reporters Without Borders, and also this week Human Rights Watch added to the mix the criticism of the way that Japan's media is going here. We know Japan to have a very vibrant press, especially the newspapers. Historically, this is a high readership, highly literate population.
Yes, it is.
But when it comes to the broadcast media, there are examples, and this is from the February 20th edition of The Economist, looking at TV Asahi, not just NHK, because often it's the public broadcaster, but two private broadcasters where there's been turnover of some popular hosts on some programs, rare that they are, that have kind of more of the talk show style where you might have something similar to maybe a Meet the Press, but there really isn't a whole lot of anything like that.
But they're aggressively questioning the current government.
Well, and how do we define aggressive? Because here in Japan, it's a very different determination of aggressive. I think the hardball in Japan had to do with one of the moderators questioning Suga about the fact that the rollout of the security bills, that perhaps that it might embroil Japan in other countries' wars. Could it sort of ratchet up Japan's being pulled into some intervention, not just the U.S., but of course regionally.
Which was not
that's
on
really softball.
Yeah,
I mean,
but it was not on the agenda, and it was not on the...
That's right.
That's the problem. Can you imagine that you have to vet these questions in advance?
Sure.
That's just, okay, can you just send the questions? I'll tell you which ones I'm going to answer. You might as well send Cat Fancy magazine to ask him what kind of cat he has or what he feeds his pet. Well,
if you don't, I'm not going to play ball. I mean, the Foreign Correspondents Club ran into the same thing, didn't they?
Well, yeah, the Foreign Correspondents Club lost any tie to the LDP. We don't even have this sort of going back and forth dialogue and debate. So as far as functionally...
And you're considering this scandalous.
Well, okay, the scandal, you brought up the woman from the group Speed, who's now going to be part of the House of Councilors.
As a candidate,
but
maybe.
Perhaps there's a functional illiteracy that's rampant, is what I'm suggesting. It doesn't just end with her. And it has to do with these members, these politicians, not being on any hot seat whatsoever. They don't have to defend anything. So we have every day this sort of bad news that we read about in Japan's economy and in its negotiations with TPP. And we just don't have any sort of intellectual back and forth on this. The universities, by and large, aren't playing any role here either. I'm representing the universities, and as you are too, Michael, and I don't think there's enough of that debate going on in the classroom.
But you have things like the SEALs and their work in terms of... And they had a huge rally over the weekend.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Thousands of people.
Yeah, tens of thousands of people that gathered here in Tokyo
over the weekend.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. Okay. Yeah, but you're not going to see a lot about it. And with the firing of these major institutions, and you have to admit, these people have been in their jobs for a very, very long time.
Huge personalities.
And so there's this question, and it's not unfair to say, they've been doing this thing for so long, and ratings are down, and maybe it's time to try something else. And you've seen Japanese news television. It's caught in a time warp.
Yes.
It's-
Right. I'm not sure what decade it is, but it's a classic oldie.
It's classical.
For sure.
And maybe finally the media is catching up to the fact that it too is part of the 21st century and has to start behaving like it. But it looks on the surface as though the LDP and Mr. Abe and Mr. Suga are calling the shots.
Right. Can we back up just a little bit and talk about, we've got 2-3 scandals now. You mentioned one, I mentioned one, Nancy's mentioned the one about the newscasters being just kind of, your contract is not being renewed. For the purpose of just wrapping up the discussion for our viewers, what other kind of scandals have just exploded just recently now that are really irritating the Prime Minister?
In terms of the Prime Minister's irritation, well, he's irritated at a lot of things all the time.
Yes,
what
he
are
is.
you thinking of?
Well, I'm thinking about the underpants. He's got a Minister of State that has been accused of, actually I think he was found guilty of.
No, they found his fingerprints. His car was out front, but he was never arrested, and he was, of course, never convicted.
Right. I think the court of public opinion knows what the story is, though, and he's been accused. I mean, the ridiculous comment that he made when he was accosted by the reporters, what is about this story that you can... And
This is the underpants story.
Right. And
I missed this.
it won't go away. It won't go away because it's too wonderful.
He was taking underpants?
Yes, he was.
Women's panties.
Yes.
Underpanties, yes.
I thought he needed more boxers. No. It couldn't be. That wouldn't be
So
scandalous.
he was the mayor's son of a small town, and there was an incident involving someone breaking into a house, which was of a young woman, and taking away the underwear.
Right.
And his fingerprints were found at the scene, and his car was at the scene. But the police were never able to find enough evidence for the prosecutor to arrest him.
And the evidence being the woman's underwear.
Well, lots of circumstantial evidence, but I mean, this crime actually is rather prevalent here in Japan for some reason.
It's true.
I'm not sure.
It is.
I haven't been caught yet.
No,
but-
there was the actor the other day who was captured inside a school, and they went to his apartment, and there were hundreds of schoolgirl uniforms.
Oh, gosh.
In his apartment, and his explanation was, when I look at them, I have a highly stressful life, and when I look at them, I calm down.
God bless you.
God bless him.
Yes.
I think just one uniform could do that.
He had hundreds that he had purloined over the years. And so, yes, you're right. There is a certain subculture, very sub, about this. But it's just one more thing that the Abe administration has to deal with. And Minister Takagi, the minister whom we're talking about, has been absolutely invisible.
Silent. Nowhere.
Nowhere, seen nowhere, talking to no one. He must show up on Tuesdays and Fridays at the Kante for the cabinet meeting, but otherwise.
Well, we've seen this. I mean, whenever the prime minister has a tight ship, things seem to be going well. And now things are fraying at the edges at an incredible speed. And these stories coming up, I mean, probably within the ebb and flow of culture as it goes on, these things happen anyway. But now it's just a pregnant opportunity for them to reach the light of day. And just consumers just love to read this sort of thing. And it's very damaging and debilitating, I think, for the administration.
And what's the way out of it, though?
Well, I was going to say, in addition to the media story, what's not going to go away to try to get out of it, 2020 is not going away. So the lead into the Olympics and Paralympics is going to be a problem if we anticipate the bad news coming from the pension fund, which it will be very bad because I saw my end of year, how my own stocks were doing. Everything's tanking. You've got a rising yen now, too, that's going to really impact then the number of visitors here. Yeah. So how do you get out of this? I suppose we sort of forget our worries for a while because Hanami season is coming.
That's right. So before spring, you can always anticipate that there will be a brief period of scandals. These kinds of things happen every year, and they're really important. Now, they're irritating the Prime Minister. We will continue to report on those, not only for the import that they have on Japanese politics, but just because they're fun and interesting. Please stay tuned.